Hello everyone and welcome. This is Jamie at Clue Amateurs and today we're talking air rifles, or maybe air pistols? Air rifle pistol? Air guns. We'll say we're talking air guns, specifically this air gun. This is my Crossman 1377. So I'm going to talk through how I came to own this gun, the modifications I've done to it, and then we're going to take it outside and do some power and accuracy tests. So this was given to me by my very good friend Adam. He was given it by someone at his shooting club and then gave it to me because he knew I really wanted an air pistol. Hopefully Adam will be joining us to do some videos on the channel very soon. So since then I've made quite a few changes to it. I've probably spent more time making changes to it than I have actually shooting it. And we'll start at the back with the biggest and most obvious change. So here I have put on a black Crossman 1399 shoulder stock, allowing me to shoulder it and shoot it as a rifle. It's a really nice short stock, gives the gun kind of this nice carbine look and feel, and to put that on I just had to unscrew the original brown wood effect grips and pop that on. Moving onwards then, probably the biggest change I've made is actually this is a steel breech. So normally these guns come with a plastic breech like this one, and then you've got the iron sights on there. Now the gun came with this breech but it wasn't attached. The original owner, as far as I could tell, had rounded out, I'll see if I can show you, had rounded out the screw that holds the breech on here. It's like a little hex nut. So what I had to do to get that out was to cut right into the breech with a rotary tool so that I could get that screw out and put on the new breech. Now initially I secured that with a replacement hex bit or like Allen nut, but then that started to round as well, so I found that GMAC Custom Parts actually do a flathead screw, so that's now in there holding that. Along with the steel breech, if I just cock it, you'll see you've got a nice, hopefully you can see that, you've got a nice long probe, whereas the probe on the bolt of the original plastic breech is much shorter, and this seats the pellet really nicely inside the barrel. So I'll just let that go. Okay, so the biggest advantage that I found though from this steel breech is the fact you've now got built-in dovetails, and this has allowed me to fit this scope. This is just a little SMK 4x20 cheap Chinese scope, but definitely one of the better ones of these I've had. I've owned a couple of these, some of them dead awful, but I saw this in a shop where a range where I was, and I thought, you know what, I'll give it another go. And actually this one's been pretty good, and you'll see me shooting with it a bit later on. When I originally got the gun, because the plastic breech had no dovetails, there were these little dovetail adapters, and these screw over the barrel, so you'd have two of them, and that then gives you a bit of a dovetail to work with. But these are pretty awful. They would turn, they would be difficult to line up, and you'd just be forever correcting the sight. Attached to those was this, which is red dot sight. Again, probably not a particularly premium one, but actually I really like this and I've had a lot of fun with this. If I'm just kind of shooting knockdown targets or cans or paper targets, and you don't want to spend loads of time and effort acquiring sight really well, this is actually really good fun to shoot with. You've got 5 levels of brightness, red and green, selection of different dots and crosses. Yeah, I actually really like this, but I have currently got the scope on the rifle. Now, other mods are a bit more difficult to see. The only power mod I've done to this gun, and there are loads of power mods you can do to this, is I've put a widened transfer port in here. So there is a little hole that delivers air from the valve in here into the barrel. That's called the transfer port. The original one looks like this. You can see you've got a very small hole there, which kind of limits the air coming through, means you've probably still got air escaping the barrel for a while after the pellet has escaped. I've replaced it with one of these, which is a much wider transfer port, allows more rapid dumping of air from the piston and the valve into the barrel. Now some people do just drill these out themselves, but I did want the option to be able to make it stock again if, for example, I were to sell it or something, or if that made it too powerful, or if it just didn't work. Yeah, so one final mod is under here, and that is a variable trigger spring, which I have set to very light. So I'm just going to pop the stock off so that you can see what that looks like. So the stock on this is super easy to get off and on, which is handy because I'm yet to find a short enough gun slip to keep this in, like a proper rifle case. So it's still being kept in a pistol case. So I do have to take the stock off every time I put it away. Okay, it's just sliding that off. And there is the variable trigger spring. And that can be adjusted by moving this little nut here up and down. And I've got this set so it's a nice light, try taking the safety off, a nice light trigger pull, which means minimal jerk of the gun when you pull the trigger. Here I've got the original trigger spring, which is much heavier and really kind of, you have to yank it, which would tend to make the gun flick slightly when you fired. That's about it for major mods. I have replaced a few screws, some of them because they'd been rounded out while the previous owner was trying to work on the gun, so that includes the one in the breech, also these on the trigger sear cover. I haven't actually done any work on the trigger sear because I've always considered that a bit of a dark art and I don't want to screw it up. Additionally, I've replaced this screw under the plug behind the hammer with a hex bit, an Allen nut, just because it's really difficult to get a screwdriver in there, and that was starting to round out. Same to under here where the main body of the gun is held onto the handle assembly. So that's about it for the gun. Other features, or that's about it for mods on the gun. You've got manual safety there, which just clicks through. Like the bolt, it's not particularly ambidextrous, it's not hugely lefty friendly, this gun, but for me being right-handed it's fine. In terms of mods I might still do to this, if I'm going to keep this black shoulder stock on, I might either spray this black or replace this pump handle with the one from the Crossman backpacker. I just think it looks a bit more in keeping, it's a bit more comfortable to hold. If I'm going to keep going down the rifle route, I might also extend the barrel. And one big mod that a lot of people do is replacing the valve and piston in here with what's called a flat top one, so it forces a lot more air in. But that would be a lot more complicated than any of the other mods that I've done, and also quite a bit more expensive, so that one's not exactly on the list right now. Yeah, so that is my Crossman 1377. If you want a more detailed video on how to do any of these mods or what the impact of them is on power or accuracy, do let us know in the comments, and I'll be more than happy to make a video on any of these specific mods. There are a couple I might even do anyway. So right now I'm going to pop the stock back on, we'll head outside and we'll do some accuracy tests. Okay, so probably not my finest bit of shooting if we're honest, and here come the excuses. It was very hot that day, it was about 34 degrees, which in England is just crazy hot. We Brits are not built for that. I was south facing, so I had the sun in my eyes. I was having to use these awful SMK Spitfire pellets, which are light and cheap, and fine for just fooling around with, but not great for accuracy, poor quality control. Also, that fence I was leaning on has seen better days. It was a bit of a rickety thing to lean on. Here are the groups I managed though. So you should have seen them in the footage, but just in case you missed anything. Not too bad, I suppose. Kind of a 2-inch group there, but definitely not the best I can do and not the best this gun can do. When I was packing up, I did actually find these in my gun case, and these are from when I first fitted the SMK scope before the UK lockdown. Much cooler weather, I had something more solid to lean on, but it was the same range because I always shoot in that same bit. And there you can see we've got those much nicer groups, much closer to 1 inch. This one's a bit folded up because I used it to prop up a camera. Yeah, so that is what this gun can do, even with this pretty cheap setup. So that's accuracy, not too bad at all. What I'm going to do now is grab this. This is my HT X3000 chronograph. Very cheap chronograph, but works pretty well. I'm yet to check it against one that I know to be accurate. And we're going to see what the velocity and the power output of the pellets is at 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10 pumps. Nothing ruins an interesting YouTube video like a spreadsheet or a graph, so here I've got both for you. I will try and keep this relatively brief. So as you can see, I did 3 shots with 3 through to 10 pumps, averaged these to get a mean velocity in feet per second, and then did a power calculation to work out the power in foot-pounds at each of these numbers of pumps. When I was doing this, I was using a 7.87 grain JSB pellet, and here you can see a nice steady increase in the velocity and the corresponding power on the right hand side of my results table. One thing I was actually really pleased with was how little spread there was in the velocity of the shots. The worst being at 8 shots, where we had a spread of 9.5 feet per second over the 3 shots, which really isn't too bad at all. As with any air rifle, air pistol, you are going to see a greater variance depending on the temperature, because that will change the pressure of the air once it's inside the valve. So you get that nice steady increase, 1.3 foot-pounds down at 3 pumps, which is very low, but for indoor shooting, short-range shooting on a still day is going to be more than enough. Going right up to 3.5 foot-pounds when you've put 10 pumps in the gun, and even that is not that high. In the UK, without a license, you can own an air pistol, which I suppose this technically still is because it can so easily be reverted to a pistol. You can own an air pistol with a power up to 6 foot-pounds, so well within that legal limit, and probably not really enough for hunting live quarry. But I do just use this for a bit of fun and a bit of target shooting, so that's really not a problem. Looking then at the graph that I plotted for these two, so you've got 2 sets of axes here. The blue line shows the mean velocity increasing from about 270 feet per second up to about 440 feet per second with 10 pumps. And you see a corresponding increase in muzzle energy from about 1.3 foot-pounds up to about 3.5. Now, what you also notice here is that the line starts to taper off. You get a relatively steady increase up to about 7 pumps, and then less of an increase after that. And you'd expect to see this because of kind of a diminishing returns law, in that if you go from 3 to 4 pumps, you are increasing the amount of air that you forced into the valve by about 33%, whereas when you go from 9 to 10 pumps, you're only increasing the amount of air by 11%. Happy to check the maths on that one if you want me to. I am actually going to do a whole video on the maths behind air rifles. So if, like me, you like airgun shooting and you're also a bit sciencey or mathsy, that could be one for you. So there was one other little experiment that I did, and that was to see if the power output was the same with different pellets. So in the video I was using pellets from this JSB test pack, and I was using the 0.78 grain, what's it called, Diablo Exact Express. In addition to this, I also did tests with the even smaller, sorry, I'm having to check the names here, the even smaller Exact RS, which is a 7.33 grain pellet, the larger 8.4 Exact, 8.44 grain Exact, the 10.34 grain Exact Heavy, and the rather ridiculous 13.43 Exact Monster. Now, obviously the lighter pellet went faster, the heavier pellets went slower, as you would expect, but once I ran the calculation to work out the muzzle energy, I did actually find that there was very little change. And that's about it for the Crossman 1377. I didn't include the footage of me actually firing the gun through the chronograph, because when I watched it back it was even more dull than the spreadsheet and the graph. I will pop that on at the end of the video though, as kind of an appendix for anyone who is interested. A couple of things I realised I forgot to say earlier, just about the build of the gun. So the barrel, this undertube that houses the piston, and the valve are all steel. Obviously originally comes with plastic breech with brass bolts, plastic foregrip and handles, and these are quite a cheap plastic. They feel cheap, they look cheap, which is one of the reasons I want to replace them. The barrel though is rifled, which definitely contributes to the accuracy that I talked about earlier. Now this turned into a bit of a review, so would I recommend this gun? Yes, definitely, but probably not for kind of the things people would normally use an air gun for. It's not a great serious target gun, it's not really powerful enough for hunting with. What it is good as though is kind of a backyard blaster, as people would refer to them. Something that you can have around, you don't need to remember to buy CO2 for it or anything, and you can shoot some cans, pop balloons, do a little bit of target shooting in a garden. Because it's quiet, because you can tone the power right down, if you've got a nice indoor space you can even use it indoors. Also, if you want to learn about how air guns work, if you want to have a go at modifying one, it's a really good place to start. It's so easy to disassemble, so easy to make changes to, and I've actually learned a lot about how air guns work from disassembling this, to making changes, putting it back together, and I definitely recommend that. One final thing which I'd recommend this for is for either improving your own technique and gun handling or teaching someone else good technique and gun handling. Because you have to pump it up between shots, every shot you make, you have to think about pointing the gun in a safe direction, using safety, target acquisition, and it allows you to develop technique or to teach technique. So yeah, that's about it for the Crossman 1377. Hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please do comment, like, subscribe. In those comments, please do let me know if you want me to see me doing anything else with this airgun, especially if you want me to go into more detail on any of the modifications that I've made. Right now though, I've been Jamie, this has been Cluey Amateurs, and I will see you next time. Okay, so now going up to 4 pumps. Okay, going up now to 5 pumps. Okay, so it's our first shot at 6 pumps. Okay, so first round at 7. Up to 8. Okay, so this is with 9 pumps. So it's maximum power, 10 pumps.